Every day it's like a new page from the Suge Knight saga. Fresh news, secrets, and revelations just keep rolling in. However, I promise you that the new Suge Knight footage making rounds right now won't be exactly what you expected. What you are seeing is the trailer of his new podcast that he's starting from prison. Is Suge dropping truth bombs? Is he spinning wild tales? Is he spilling the beans on all the behind-the-scenes shenanigans? Hold on to those question marks, because in this video, we will look at many unanswered questions this new podcast can help uncover. Podcast of Beefs. In hip-hop, only a few names carry as much weight and controversy as Suge Knight. From his rise to power as the co-founder of Death Row Records to his involvement in high-profile legal battles, Suge has always been at the center of attention. But now, he's taking his story to a whole new level with his groundbreaking podcast, Collect Calls with Suge Knight. His journey into the podcasting world may come as a surprise to many, considering his current situation. Incarcerated in a California prison, he might have found a way to break through the physical barriers and connect with the outside world. With the help of Dave Mays, the CEO of Breakbeat Media and founder of The Source magazine, Suge said he's ready to address the headlines and controversies that have surrounded him for decades. But what exactly motivated Suge Knight to start a podcast from behind bars? It's a question that has intrigued fans and critics alike. According to sources close to Suge, he felt a burning desire to set the record straight and confront those who have used his name for their own gain. Throughout his career, Suge has been the subject of countless rumors and allegations, and now he's ready to address them head on. Suge wants to use Collect Calls as a platform to share his side of the story. He aims to challenge some of the narratives that have been spun around him and shed light on the truth behind the headlines. But it's not just about addressing the controversies. Suge Knight also sees this podcast as an opportunity to educate and inspire the younger generation. With decades of experience in the music industry, Suge has a wealth of knowledge to share. He wants to provide aspiring artists with valuable insights and guidance, drawing from his own successes and failures. Additionally, Suge Knight plans to answer audience questions, creating a unique opportunity for fans to interact with the man himself. One of the most intriguing aspects of Suge Knight's new podcast is the lineup of beefs he plans to address. From former associates to industry figures, the list is both extensive and captivating. First on the list is Akon, the Grammy-nominated artist known for hits like Locked Up and Smack That. Suge Knight has made it clear that he wants to address the claims made by Akon and set the record straight. In August 2020, Akon talked to Vlad TV about an incident involving Suge Knight in 2009. This happened at a private party in a hotel during the NBA All-Star Weekend. The police were called because there was a fight between Akon and Suge's crews in the VIP area. They arrived and saw a man hitting Suge Knight twice in the head, so they had to use tasers to stop the fight. A person named Robert Ja Carnes, who was working with Akon at the time, was charged with a serious assault because of how badly Suge Knight was hurt. Another man, Thomas Anderson Jr., was arrested for assault and disorderly conduct. Akon mentioned that the night took a bad turn when Suge Knight confronted him about a $12,500 debt he owed to a producer named Detail. Akon refused, and Suge threatened to fight. According to Akon, a guy named 2T's started the fight after he noticed someone had a gun. Ja also hit Suge Knight, who fell down slowly. Akon said Suge snitched on Ja. He said, Suge did more than press charges. He did more than sue. He did what everybody is mad at 6ix9ine about. I'm just saying, he did what everybody mad at 6ix9ine about. I had to pay off Suge to drop the charges for Ja, cause I couldn't see my man going to jail for that shit. Ja had just got out. Me and Ja never really split. When that happened at that moment, we had to show a little bit of distance cause of all the shit that was going on. I felt it was more for Ja's protection, even though I don't think he needed protection. But normally when someone gets knocked out, they don't come back with fists. They come back wanting to blaze. As long as Ja was close to me, he could be a target because of that. Now, this new podcast will give us a chance to hear Suge's side of the story. Another name that has piqued the interest of fans is Harry O, the co-founder of Death Row Records. Suge Knight and Harry O have a complicated history, and this podcast provides an opportunity for us to know what really happened between them. During the 1980s, Michael Harry O. Harris was a big deal in South Central Los Angeles. They called him Godfather because he ran a huge criminal operation. He worked with gangs like the Bloods and Crips, and also with the Colombian cartel, managing a massive drug business that made almost $2 million every day. Harry O wanted to help his community by using money from his criminal activities to support local businesses. But in the end, he got into trouble. He was accused of serious crimes like drug trafficking and attempted murder, and he insisted that he was innocent. At first, Harry O faced attempted murder charges, but they were later dropped when the victim changed their statement. However, he still had to serve time for a drug charge, totaling 33 years in prison. While in prison for a long time, Harry O decided to make positive changes in his life. life. He started mentorship programs for other inmates and played a key role in creating a hugely influential music label. He partnered with Suge Knight to create Death Row Records. Even though he was in jail, he still had a role in running the company and faced both good times and tough times. In 2021, former President Donald Trump pardoned Harry O, who had been in prison for over 30 years. After getting out of prison, Harry O quickly got back into the music business. He teamed up with Snoop Dogg to bring Death Row Records back to life and became its top manager. They plan to brand it as an NFT label and explore opportunities within the metaverse. With this venture, Harris aims to provide a platform for young voices from communities of color to share their stories through music and art. In an interview with TMZ, Suge accused his old business partner, Harry O, of using bankruptcy fraud to take over their label from him. Suge also questioned whether Snoop truly owns the label, and he thinks the music catalog might end up back in his hands. But Suge's biggest problem with the new ownership is that Harry O is involved. He said, "They committed fraud, they bankruptcy fraud. I didn't lose my company by doing anything wrong. They went in and the lawyer didn't show up and they got a default judgment." Suge's falling out with Harry O is said to be the topic on one of the episodes of this new podcast. Master P, the legendary rapper and entrepreneur, is also on Suge Knight's list. These two industry titans have had a tumultuous relationship over the years, and now Suge has a chance to address their differences. Rumors said when Snoop Dogg left Death Row Records, Master P paid Suge Knight $3 million and offered him a share of profits from Snoop Dogg's future albums in a deal to get Snoop on board with No Limit. This helped Snoop find a fresh start. But there was still some tension between Suge and Master P. Suge Knight and Snoop Dogg have had a complex relationship, marked by both loyalty and conflict. With Suge's podcast, we have an opportunity to catch a glimpse of what happened between them. Snoop Dogg's path to fame is a remarkable tale, closely linked to music producer Dr. Dre and Suge Knight. His journey in hip-hop is quite extraordinary, and you need to know some important details about his connection with Suge Knight to understand it. Snoop Dogg learned from Dr. Dre, and they made great music together. Suge Knight was in charge of the business side of Death Row Records and controlled the money. Snoop Dogg faced a serious murder trial during his successful doggy-style days. He was worried about leaving his son if he got an 11-year sentence. Fortunately, he was found not guilty, giving him a new beginning. But this is when Dr. Dre decided to move away from Suge Knight because of his violent actions. Dre chose not to help with Snoop's second album, The Dogfather. Snoop, just like Dre, got tired of Death Row Records' focus on violence. In a 2011 interview with VH1, he talked about wanting to make more positive music. The Dogfather album was a big change for him, showing his transformation away from celebrating negativity. Snoop Dogg's last album with Death Row was The Dogfather. The label lost its spark after Tupac's death and Dr. Dre left. Things got worse when Suge Knight got arrested and went to prison for 9 years. So Snoop decided to leave Death Row and join No Limit Records, which led to a big change in his music style and 2 albums that don't get enough credit. Snoop Dogg's feelings about Suge Knight changed a lot. He didn't like how Suge was all about himself and didn't share ownership. On the other hand, Master P had a more cooperative approach, which Snoop preferred. So he left Death Row Records for No Limit Records. Now we can only be hopeful this podcast will share some of their untold stories. Dr. Dre, the iconic producer and former collaborator of Suge Knight, is another figure Suge has expressed his desire to talk about in his podcast. This podcast promises to provide a unique insight into the dynamics of their relationship. Dr. Dre and Suge Knight had a long-standing feud since the 1990s when Dre switched from Death Row to Interscope Records. This feud is believed to have led to a murder that imprisoned Suge. There's a rumor reported by TMZ that Suge Knight visited the Straight Outta Compton movie set looking for Dr. Dre to reconcile, as per an anonymous source. When he showed up on the Compton set, Suge Knight was told to leave by Dr. Dre's security team. This led to a fight, and Suge Knight got into his truck and ran over 3 people, including his friend Terry Carter, who died. Suge Knight later turned himself into the police and is now behind bars for voluntary manslaughter. Why is he in jail? On the evening of January 29, 2015, the streets of Compton, California bore witness to a tragedy courtesy of Mary and Suge Knight. It all began with an argument on the set of the highly anticipated Straight Outta Compton. Suge had a heated exchange with 2 men, Terry Carter, his friend and co-founder of Heavyweight Records, and filmmaker CLE Sloan. Eyewitnesses later recounted the events that unfolded that day. After the argument, Suge, seemingly consumed by rage, followed Carter and Sloan to a nearby burger stand parking lot. Security footage captured the chilling moment when Knight, behind the wheel of his car, accelerated towards the 2 men. The collision was brutal and appeared intentional. Terry Carter tragically lost his life, while CLE Sloan suffered severe injuries, including multiple fractures in his ankles and head injuries. Was this a deliberate act of violence? Did Knight have a motive for his actions? The answers to these questions would soon be revealed as the investigation into the incident unfolded. Suge, however, maintained that he had acted in self-defense. He claimed that he feared for his life after being attacked by Sloan and others. The prosecution had to navigate through a web of conflicting narratives, eyewitness testimonies, and the undeniable evidence captured on security footage. The truth behind what happened that night would be unveiled, but the road to justice would be long and arduous. As the legal proceedings unfolded, the case took a series of dramatic twists and turns. In March 2015, Suge's health took a turn for the worse. He informed the judge that he was suffering from blindness and other complications. This revelation raised concerns about his ability to stand trial. At the same time, Suge became dissatisfied with the attorneys handling his murder case and decided to fire them. He also claimed that he was receiving inadequate medical treatment while in custody. Amidst the turmoil, the court set an astonishing bail amount of $25 million for his release. Shortly after the bail setting was announced, he collapsed in court. On April 16, 2015, Suge received a glimmer of hope when his bail was reduced to $10 million. However, the legal battles continued, and Knight's defense team faced numerous obstacles along the way. In July 2015, his lawyer suggested that he might have a brain tumor. This revelation came on the same day that Suge's request for lower bail was refused. In January 2016, Suge Knight made yet another change in his legal representation, marking the fourth time he had switched counsel since the beginning of his murder trial. The constant changes in his defense team added to the already chaotic nature of the case, leaving many to wonder about the strategy behind these decisions. As the months passed, the legal battles continued to intensify. In May 2016, 3 new attorneys replaced the 2 hired earlier in the year. In July 2016, the judge delivered a blow to Suge's defense when he denied a motion to reveal the identities of several key prosecution witnesses. Citing Suge Knight's long history of violence, the judge deemed it necessary to protect the witnesses' identity. This ruling left Suge emotionally distraught, as he believed that his health problems and the challenges he faced would ultimately lead to his demise behind bars. In March 2017, his health issues once again took center stage. He was hospitalized after suffering from blood clots, a condition that had been affecting him for 2 years by that time. This hospitalization further delayed the trial, pushing it back to September 2018. In a surprising turn of events, Suge pleaded no contest to the charge of voluntary manslaughter. In the end, the judge sentenced him to 28 years in prison, with 22 years for the act of running over Terry Carter, resulting in his tragic death. He received an additional 6 years due to it being his 3rd strike under California's 3 strikes law. As of March 2023, Knight remains incarcerated at the R.J. Donovan Correctional Facility in San Diego. He will not be eligible for parole until October 2034. The incarceration has been long coming. In the early 1990s, Suge Knight's legal troubles began to make headlines, setting the stage for what would later be a hell of a rap sheet. It all started in 1992, when Suge reportedly assaulted 2 rappers at a Hollywood recording studio. This incident marked the beginning of a pattern of violence that would become synonymous with his name. Fast forward to 1995, and Suge found himself facing serious felony convictions. He pleaded no contest to armed robbery and assault with a firearm in a federal case. These charges stem from an incident where Suge and his associates were involved in a violent altercation. The following year, in 1996, Suge's legal troubles took a turn for the worse. He was sentenced to 9 years in prison for violating his parole. The violation was allegedly due to a fight that occurred just hours before the tragic drive-by shooting that took the life of Tupac in Las Vegas. While he maintained his innocence, the parole violation landed him behind bars for 5 years until his release in August 2001. During this period, several individuals associated with Death Row Records, as well as Suge's rivals, met untimely and violent deaths. According to the Washington Post, from 1997 to 2003, there were multiple incidents where Death Row associates and rivals were killed. Among the victims were 2 of Suge's bodyguards, Henry Hendog Smith and the creator of the Death Row logo, just to name a few. In 2003, he found himself in trouble with the law once again. This time, it was for reportedly punching a nightclub valet. The incident resulted in a 10-month sentence, further adding to his growing rap sheet. At that point, it seemed that Suge couldn't escape the cycle of violence and legal entanglements that had become a recurring theme in his life. But the legal roller coaster didn't end there. Later in 2005, Suge was arrested in Barstow, California, after police discovered marijuana in his vehicle during a routine traffic stop. This violation led to charges of parole violation. Although he was released a week later, he was placed under house arrest for 2 months. That same year, Suge faced yet another shocking incident. He was shot in the upper leg at a preemptive MTV Music Awards party in Miami, which was honoring Kanye West. The incident left Suge injured and in need of surgery. In 2008, he filed a lawsuit against Kanye West, citing mental and physical damages, surgery costs, loss of income, and theft. In 2006, his legal woes extended beyond assault charges and parole violation. He filed for bankruptcy after a civil lawsuit regarding Death Row Records. The year 2008 brought more legal drama for him. He was involved in an altercation at a Hollywood nightclub, where he was reportedly knocked out cold for 3 minutes after an argument over money. Despite the severity of the incident, he refused to file a police report or cooperate with law enforcement. Later that same year, Suge was arrested once again, this time on drug and aggravated assault charges. 2 Las Vegas Metro police officers witnessed Suge 10 feet away, punching a naked woman with one hand while holding a knife in the other. This shocking scene unfolded in a parking lot off the Las Vegas Strip. Surprisingly, he was reportedly partying in a nightclub less than 24 hours after posting bail on previous charges. However, he was eventually cleared of all charges. In 2009, Suge Knight faced yet another physical altercation, this time at the W Scottsdale Hotel. He was punched by Robert L. Carnes Jr., who was Akon's business manager. The incident resulted in face injuries for Suge, and both Carnes Jr. and Thomas Leon Anderson Jr. were accused of assault and disorderly conduct. In 2012, he was arrested in Las Vegas after police found marijuana in his vehicle. This seemingly minor offense led to the discovery of multiple warrants for prior traffic violations. As a result, he was placed on 3 years of unsupervised probation for driving with a suspended license. The year 2014 proved to be a particularly eventful and challenging one for Suge Knight. He was shot at another West Hollywood-based pre-MTV VMAs party hosted by Chris Brown. The incident left Suge hospitalized after being shot 6 times. The authorities were once again unable to identify a suspect, and Suge Knight, in his true form, refused to cooperate with the police. But the legal troubles didn't end there. In the same year, he was arrested in Las Vegas in connection with a robbery charge in California. Alongside comedian Cat Williams, Suge was accused of stealing a camera from a paparazzi in Beverly Hills. The photographer suffered minor injuries during the incident. Suge and Cat were charged with 1 count of second-degree robbery. Suge was taken into custody on $500,000 bail. While in jail, he experienced chest pain, dizziness, and fell. He was ultimately hospitalized for a blood clot in his lung. Outside of these legal issues, there are many stories that do his reputation zero favors. The most fearsome figure in hip-hop history, Marion Knight Jr., who also goes by the name Suge Knight, is famous for his tough and intimidating reputation. He's best known for starting Death Row Records, a big hip-hop record label from the 90s. Initially, he was a gentle and lovable child affectionately called Sugar Bear by his mother. However, as he grew into a 6'2", 250-pound man, his kind nature disappeared, replaced by aggressiveness, arrogance, and perhaps a bit of insanity. Instead of using smart business tactics, he mostly relied on aggression to achieve his goals. People stopped calling him Sugar Bear because of this. Back in school, he used to bully wealthy kids into giving him their lunch money. Later, he briefly played professional football before becoming a famous bodyguard, especially known for protecting musician Bobby Brown. Suge Knight came to understand that owning music was the key to wealth. He partnered with Dr. Dre and used some intimidating tactics to end Dre's contract with Eazy-E. They created Death Row Records, and it became successful, but it also became associated with violence and controversy due to Suge Knight. Now let's check out some particularly wild incidents involving him. Back in 1992, Death Row Records was just beginning to make its mark in the music industry. Dr. Dre invited aspiring rappers Linwood and George Stanley to the studio for a recording session. It was a dream come true for the 2 young artists who were eager to showcase their talent and make a name for themselves. Little did they know that their encounter with Suge Knight would turn their dreams into a nightmare. As Linwood picked up a phone to make a call, he unknowingly grabbed the phone reserved for drug kingpin Harry O, the main financier of Death Row, who was serving time in prison. Suge noticed Linwood's mistake and approached him. He gave Linwood a chance to walk away peacefully, but Linwood, unaware of the danger he was in, responded defiantly, saying, "Don't be coming at me with all that gangbang shit. I'm not from LA." Suge's embarrassment quickly turned to rage. Without hesitation, he pulled out a gun and forced Linwood and George Stanley to strip down to their underwear. He mercilessly battered the 2 aspiring rappers. To further ensure their compliance and silence, Suge confiscated their IDs. Once released from the Death Row studios, battered and bruised, Linwood and George Stanley wasted no time in seeking justice. They stepped forward and filed a lawsuit against Suge Knight, determined to hold him accountable for the violence they had endured. Instead of facing the consequences of his actions, Suge resorted to bribery. He offered the prosecuting attorney's daughter, Gina Longo, a record deal on Death Row Records, effectively buying off his own defense. The corrupt nature of this arrangement did not go unnoticed. Larry Longo, the prosecutor in the case, was subsequently fired from the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office. The following year, Yodechi, one of the biggest R&B groups in the country at the time, was at at the receiving end of Suge Knight's infamous wrath. Known as the bad boys of the genre, Jodeci captivated audiences with their soulful and seductive music. Rumors had it that Jodeci considered switching from Uptown Records to Death Row Records because they thought it might offer better deals. Suge Knight tried to force their decision by either hurting or scaring Andre Harrell, who founded Uptown Records and was a mentor to Jodeci's manager, Sean Puffy Combs. In the end, Jodeci chose to stick with Uptown Records, and this choice had big consequences. Outraged by their loyalty to a rival label, Uptown Records retaliated by refusing to promote Jodeci's second album, Diary of a Mad Band. Then in July of 1993, Devontae Swing, responsible for much of the group's music production, fell victim to a brutal home invasion. He was bound, beaten mercilessly, and left with a split-open skull. The attackers made off with approximately $20,000 worth of jewelry and other valuables. The details of the assault were gruesome, and the aftermath was equally devastating. Devontae, who is a key figure in Jodeci's success, faced mental health and substance abuse issues. These struggles led to writer's block, and this contributed to the downfall of Jodeci a few years later. Some people suspect Suge Knight's involvement. Some thought Devontae might have stopped producing music for Death Row because he felt he wasn't fairly paid, a common complaint at the label. The Jodeci members didn't clearly state their beliefs about the attacker, and rumors about the assault continued. One disturbing version suggests that Devontae was sexually assaulted in front of his family members by Suge Knight's associates. The truth behind the assault on Devontae Swing may never be fully revealed, but the hip-hop community remains convinced that Suge Knight is involved. A year later, a similar incident happened with Happy David Walters. He was a prominent figure in the early and mid-90s hip-hop scene, managing artists like RZA, House of Pain, and Cypress Hill, and co-owning Immortal Records. He also released successful albums like the Judgment Night soundtrack. Walters vanished mysteriously after withdrawing cash from an ATM in Los Angeles and was missing for 2 days. A missing persons report was filed. When he was eventually discovered in Long Beach, he had injuries and a shaved head. Walters claimed not to remember where he was during his disappearance, but many suspected Suge's involvement. Suge Knight wanted to sign RZA, who was represented by Happy Walters, for his new record label, Death Row East. Walters had mocked Suge on the Judgment Day soundtrack, and this led some people to suspect Suge's involvement in Walters' abduction. Unsurprisingly, Walters released RZA from his contract and left the hip-hop industry. He found success in entertainment, particularly as the owner of Catalyst Sports and Media. Suge Knight was also violent towards women, harming his ex-wives such as Sharitha Golden, who obtained a restraining order against him in 1987, and Michelle Toussaint, whose jaw he dislocated. In 2008, Suge Knight violently attacked his girlfriend, Melissa Isaac, at a strip club. A phone call made him angry, leading to a brutal assault that left her unconscious. Witnesses reported that he kicked her in the head and undressed her. The police arrested Suge that same night, charging him with assault and drug possession. Isaac disappeared on the day she was supposed to testify against Knight, which made people suspect he might have made her vanish. However, she returned and explained that Suge convinced her to miss the court date. Once again, Suge Knight avoided facing consequences for his violent actions. In a 2019 interview with Cam Capone News, Big Nas, who was Eminem's security guard, discussed a situation involving Suge Knight. He said Suge sent a group of people to create trouble for Snoop Dogg, Dr. Dre, and Eminem. This happened because Snoop had left Death Row Records to join No Limit, causing a conflict between him and Suge. To get back at Snoop, Suge didn't hold back. He sent 50 people from Los Angeles to Hawaii, while Snoop, Dr. Dre, and Eminem were there for a performance. Big Nas said, "The scariest moment is when we went to Hawaii. When the plane landed, we are greeted by 20 Honolulu police officers, and they told us that Death Row was here. They tried to hem Snoop Dogg up." Suge Knight had sent 50 guys to try to break up the show. When we got there, vacation mode was over. We were locking and loading, putting on bulletproof vests with their wives and girlfriends sitting next to them. We had to have Interscope pick up the tab to put Honolulu police with each bodyguard because of how deep Suge was over there. Nas also noticed that some tough-looking guys were on the same plane back to Los Angeles. He chatted with a few of them during the flight without any issues. Eminem was clear about not wanting to work with Suge Knight on this trip. While it didn't turn violent, it revealed how determined Suge was to get his way. But that's not the end of the crazy incidents. In 2022, Outlaw's member Napoleon shared his own encounter with Suge Knight. This happened in New York during Tupac's performance on Saturday Night Live. Tensions rose when Suge took one of Napoleon's friends to another room because he felt disrespected. Napoleon said, "Suge took one of my homies in a room and he was mad at something he said said, "I went in there and I remember pushing Suge's hand because he was pointing at one of my homies, and when I pushed his hand, then Pac got mad at me." Tupac thought Napoleon would support Suge, but Napoleon refused because he knew Suge could get violent. Napoleon also suggested that he could have prevented trouble that night for himself and Suge thanks to his friend's uncle, known as the Reaper, who was waiting outside to step in if needed. Another scary story about Suge Knight can be found in the New York Times and in a book by hip-hop journalist Ronan Rowe called The Spectacular Rise and Violent Fall of Death Row Records. This book delves into the behind-the-scenes events at Death Row Records, and this particular story is quite shocking. Rowe claims that Suge Knight once attacked a promoter named Mark Anthony Bell in 1995, allegedly forcing him to drink his urine. This incident supposedly happened because Bell refused to disclose Diddy's home address. Years later, Suge confirmed this bizarre incident. In 2023, Reggie Wright Jr. shared more stories about Suge on the Boss Talk 101 Inches podcast. In the podcast, Wright said that Suge Knight disrespected Liar Cohen during a conversation about Snoop Dogg's contract. Cohen was a top executive at Def Jam Records and was trying to make a deal with Snoop Dogg, even visiting Suge Knight in prison. However, Suge Knight thought the money Cohen wanted was too much and reportedly spat on Cohen's face while they were in prison. Wright Jr. said, "He comes and offers Suge $7 million. Tell Liar the most I can get for Snoop is $7 million. Suge never really liked the East Coasters or labels or whatever. And I'm like, okay, Liar, yeah, we got a deal." Suge goes and tells Liar, "No," spits in Liar's face. Spits in his face because of how the conversation went at the prison at San Luis Obispo. Despite Suge Knight's tough image and reputation for violence, there is a heartwarming story about his deep affection for Tupac. Irv Gotti shared this touching tale on Vlad TV, and Ja Rule confirmed it during an interview with 2File. When Suge met Tupac, he was so moved by the similarities that he started crying. Ja Rule said, "It was an emotional moment for Suge because I think he's seen qualities in me that I guess he's seen in Pac. And then actually meeting me, we had, I guess, similar energy to him because he asked me a question. And when I answered, he said, 'Yo, that's exactly what Pac said.' And he got real emotional. This is real shit." While Suge is usually seen as tough and intimidating, there might be a more human side to him that we haven't seen yet. Hopefully, we'll get to know this side of him in the upcoming podcast episodes. If you like this video, just tap the card on your screen now to watch more videos about the hip-hop scene.